She's not annoyed at the dish in the sink. She's annoyed at everything it represents, and at how many times she's had to notice it alone before you ever did. Today, we'll talk about why your girlfriend gets annoyed easily, so pay attention. Let's start with the first reason. Number 1, the pattern, not the plate. Here's what most men believe. They believe their girlfriend is reacting to one small thing: a dish left in the sink, a late text, a joke that landed wrong. Because the thing itself is small, they assume the reaction is an overreaction. This is where you're wrong, and it's costing you more than you realize. Her brain does not process that dish as an isolated event. It processes it as the latest entry in a running count. You are not seeing a single data point. She is seeing the whole pattern, and the dish is just the most recent proof of it. When you say, "It's just one dish," you are arguing about the wrong thing entirely. She was never arguing about the dish. I want you to understand how this works. Every time something happens that confirms an existing belief about you, your girlfriend's brain files it. Quietly. No announcement, no flashing warning sign. It just gets added to a folder labeled, "Things I have to manage alone." The dish today isn't dish number 1, it's dish number 47. And you're standing there, defending dish number 47, like it's the whole case, when she's been building this file for months. Here's the mistake most men make when this happens. You say, "Why are you so upset? It's one dish." She says, "It's not about the dish." You say, "Then what is it about?" She says, "Forget it." You say, "No, seriously, I did the dishes yesterday." She says, "That's not the point." Notice what happened there. You kept trying to win the specific argument about the dish, while she was trying to talk about the pattern. You never got there. You never will, arguing dish by dish. Here's the version that actually works. You say, "You seem more frustrated than just the dish. What's actually going on?" She says, "It just feels like I'm always the one who notices." You say, "You're probably right. What would it look like if I noticed first, more often?" She says, "Honestly, that would mean a lot." Same dish, same night. Completely different outcome, because one version argued the event, and the other version addressed the pattern underneath it. Here's what I need you to understand about her internal experience in these moments. When she's staring at that dish, she's not actually thinking about the dish. She's thinking something closer to this. If I don't say something now, this becomes normal. And if this becomes normal, I become the manager of this relationship, forever, alone. That thought happens in seconds, before she's even opened her mouth. You're reacting to her tone. She's reacting to a future she doesn't want. From now on, every time she reacts strongly to something that seems small, I want you to ask yourself one question before you respond. Not, "Is this a big deal?" but, "What pattern does this confirm for her?" That single shift in framing will change almost every argument you have from here forward. Most men never make this shift. They spend years defending individual incidents, while their girlfriend is quietly grading a trend line they can't even see. I know this sounds like something you've heard before, dressed up as "listen to your partner," but this isn't about listening harder in the moment. The dish, the text, the joke, these are just the visible tip of something bigger underneath. Chase the tip, and you'll be chasing it forever, one small fire at a time. Address the pattern, and the individual fires start going out on their own, because the thing feeding them finally got noticed. That covers the first reason. But this pattern recognition problem doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's fed by something specific, something most men have never once thought about. Number 2, the invisible job she never applied for. Most men think fairness means splitting tasks. You take out the trash, she does the laundry. You handle the car, she handles groceries. On paper, that looks even, 50-50. Here's what that math completely leaves out. Doing a task is not the same as managing a task. Managing means remembering it needs to happen before it needs to happen. It means noticing the fridge is getting low, tracking whose birthday is coming up, sensing that a friend has gone quiet and needs a check-in, knowing which bills are due without being reminded. This is what's called the mental load. And in most relationships, she's carrying almost all of it, even when the physical chores look split evenly. Here's the part that actually creates the annoyance. It's not the labor itself, it's the loneliness of being the only one tracking it. When you wait to be told what needs doing, you're still making her do the hardest part, the noticing, even if you happily do the task once she assigns it. From now on, I want you to understand there is a line where mental load stops being manageable and starts becoming resentment. I call this the load line. Every relationship has one. Cross it too many times, and small requests start sounding like nagging, when really, they're just exhaustion leaking out. Here's the wrong way this usually plays out. You say, "You should have just asked me to do it." She says, "I shouldn't have to ask." You say, "How am I supposed to know if you don't tell me?" She says, "Because I've told you 100 times, and now I'm tired of being the one who has to." That conversation goes nowhere, because you're defending your willingness to do the task, while she's talking about the exhaustion of being the only one who ever sees it coming. Here's the version that actually lands. You say, "I noticed we were low on groceries before you said anything, so I picked some up." She says, "Wait, really? You just noticed?" You say, "Yeah, I want to actually own this stuff, not just wait to be told." She says, "You have no idea how much that means." Same relationship, same tasks, completely different result, because one version waits to be managed and the other version takes ownership of the noticing itself. Here's what's happening in her head when she's carrying this alone. It sounds something like this. If I stop tracking everything, does it all just fall apart? Am I the only adult in this relationship? That thought is exhausting to carry every single day, and it has nothing to do with how much she loves you. It has everything to do with how tired she is of being the default operating system for both your lives. Most men never even see this invisible job exists, because nobody ever handed them a written job description for it. That's exactly the problem, and it's rarely talked about. Stop waiting for the job description. Start noticing before you're told, and watch how much of her easily annoyed behavior quietly disappears. I know this sounds like a small shift, noticing before being told, but small shifts are exactly what change the temperature of a relationship over time. You don't need a grand gesture to fix this. You need to become someone who sees the invisible work happening around you, instead of someone who waits to be handed a list. That's the second reason, and it's usually invisible until you know to look for it. Now let's talk about something even harder to spot. Number 3, the bid she made that you missed. Every relationship runs on small moments of reaching out. She says, "Look at this." She points at something out the window. She sighs a little louder than normal. She tells you about something weird that happened at work. Most men treat these as random noise, small comments that don't require much of a response. Here's the reframe. Every one of those small moments is what's called a bid. It's a tiny attempt to connect, and how you respond to it either builds trust or slowly drains it, one missed moment at a time. Here's what most men get wrong. They think connection happens in the big moments, date nights, anniversaries, deep conversations. But relationships are actually built or broken in the tiny moments nobody remembers individually. When she shows you something on her phone, and you glance up for half a second and go back to yours, that registers. Not as a huge betrayal, but as a small, "not now." Do that enough times, and she stops making the bids altogether. And once she stops trying to connect with you in small ways, she starts reacting to everything you do with less patience, because the well of goodwill has quietly run dry. Here's the wrong way this shows up, she says. "Look at this video, it's so funny." You say, "Yeah, cool, 1 second," she says. "Never mind." You say, "What?" I said 1 second. She says, "It's fine, forget it. Nothing dramatic happened there." That's exactly why it's dangerous. It felt like nothing, and it happens 50 times a week. Here's the version that builds something real. She says, "Look at this video, it's so funny." You say, "Show me, hold on." She says, "See, isn't that ridiculous?" You say, "That's actually hilarious. Send me that." Small moment, 4 seconds of your attention. But that 4 seconds tells her something bigger. It tells her she's not competing with your phone for your focus. Here's what's going through her head every time a bid gets missed. It's rarely a dramatic thought. It's usually something quieter and sadder than that. "Okay, I guess I'll stop trying." She's not keeping score in a vengeful way. She's just slowly recalibrating how much of herself she brings to you, based on how much of you shows up for her in return. I want you to understand this. The annoyance that shows up later, over something that seems unrelated, is often just the delayed bill for 100 small bids that never got answered. From now on, treat every small "look at this" or random comment as a test you actually want to pass. It costs you almost nothing. It buys you almost everything. I know this sounds small compared to the bigger issues most men think ruin relationships, but most relationships don't end because of one massive betrayal. They erode because of 1,000 tiny moments where someone reached out and got nothing back. You don't need to become a different person to fix this. You just need to start looking up when she talks. That single habit, done consistently, will do more for how easily annoyed she seems than any grand gesture ever could. This is the part nobody talks about. Most men wait for the big romantic moments to prove their love, while completely missing the dozens of tiny openings she gives them every single day. Fix this one habit, and you will genuinely be surprised at how much calmer she becomes over time. That's the third reason, and it's the one most men are guilty of without ever realizing it. Now we're getting into something that runs even deeper. Number 4. She's not reading your words, she's reading your effort. Most men think if they say the right thing, the problem is solved. She's upset, so you apologize with the correct sentence, and you expect the tension to disappear on command. Here's the reframe you need to sit with. She's not actually grading your vocabulary. She's grading the effort behind it. A perfect apology delivered flat, fast, and distracted reads as less sincere than a clumsy one delivered with real attention. Words are the packaging. Effort is what's actually inside the box, and she can tell the difference instantly. This is why "I'm sorry" sometimes makes things worse instead of better. If it's said quickly just to end the conversation, she doesn't hear an apology. She hears, "I want this argument over so I can go back to what I was doing." The words were technically correct. The delivery told the real story. Here's the wrong way this plays out. She says, "You never even asked how my day was." You say, "Okay, sorry, how was your day?" She says, "Forget it. It doesn't matter now." You say, "I just asked. What do you want from me?" Technically, you said the right words, but the tone said, "I'm doing this because you made me," and she heard that louder than the question itself. Here's the version that actually works. She says, "You never even asked how my day was." You say, "You're right. I got in my head today and I dropped the ball. Seriously, how was it?" She says, "It was actually pretty rough." You say, "Tell me everything. I'm not going anywhere." Same words on paper, completely different effort behind them. One version rushes past her. The other one slows down for her. I want you to imagine this. You come home, and she's had a hard day. You could walk in, say, "How was your day?" on autopilot while scrolling your phone, or you could put the phone down, look at her, and actually wait for the answer like it matters. The words are identical in both versions. The outcome will not be, she will remember which one you gave her, even if she never says it out loud. Here's what she's usually thinking when the effort doesn't match the words. It's rarely, "He doesn't love me." It's closer to, "He's saying the right thing because he learned it, not because he means it right now." That gap between correct words and real effort is exactly where a lot of "she's so easily annoyed" moments actually come from. She's not annoyed at what you said. She's annoyed at how little it cost you to say it. This is the mistake most men make without realizing it. They think saying the technically correct thing earns them credit, the same way handing in homework earns a grade, regardless of how much thought went into it. Relationships don't grade that way. She's not checking boxes on a worksheet. She's reading whether you actually slowed down for her or just wanted the moment to pass. From now on, before you respond to her in a tense moment, ask yourself if you're about to give her the right words or the real thing. They are not always the same, and she can always tell. Most men never think about the difference between correct words and real presence, because on the surface, they look identical. But she is not living on the surface. She is living in the gap between what you said and how much of yourself you actually gave her while you said it. That's the fourth reason, and once you see it, you can't unsee it in every conversation you have. Now we're getting into the hardest one to understand. Number 5, the reservoir effect. Here's the concept most men never grasp, and it's the one that explains almost every "she's overreacting" moment you've ever had. Annoyance is not a light switch. It's a reservoir. Every unnoticed pattern, every unshared mental load, every missed bid, every hollow apology, all of it drips into the same container, slowly, quietly, over weeks and months. You never see the reservoir filling. You only see the moment it overflows. And by the time it overflows, it's rarely about the thing that triggered it. I call this the reservoir rule. The size of her reaction is almost never about the size of the trigger. It's about how full the reservoir already was. This is why you'll see her explode over something that seems genuinely tiny, a wrong tone, a forgotten errand, a joke at the wrong moment, and think she's being completely irrational. She's not being irrational. She's just been carrying more than you realized, for longer than you realized, and this was simply the drop that finally pushed it over the edge. Blaming the drop is like blaming the last raindrop for a flood. The drop isn't the problem. The months of rain are the problem. Here's the wrong way men usually handle this moment. You say, "Why are you freaking out over something so small?" She says, "It's not just this, it's everything." You say, "That's not fair. You're blowing up over nothing." She says, "See, this is exactly the problem. You just argued the size of the drop while she was talking about the size of the reservoir. You lost that argument the second you opened your mouth. Here's the version that actually diffuses it. You say, 'This feels bigger than just tonight. What's actually been building up?' She says, 'Honestly, a lot of small things I haven't said anything about.' You say, 'Then let's actually talk through them, not just this one thing.' She says, 'I really didn't expect you to say that.' Same explosive moment, completely different trajectory, because one version fights the drop and the other version finally acknowledges the rain. Imagine yourself in this exact scenario. You come home, she snaps at you over something genuinely minor, and every instinct in your body wants to defend yourself, to explain why her reaction doesn't match the crime. I want you to resist that instinct completely. In that exact moment, don't ask, 'Why are you so upset about this?' Ask what else has been building. That one sentence, asked with real patience, will do more to lower the water level than 100 perfect apologies about the dish, the text, or the joke that started it. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never want to hear. You cannot fix a full reservoir by fixing the last drop. You fix it by consistently draining it before it fills. Through the pattern awareness, the shared mental load, the answered bids, and the real effort we've already covered. Most men spend their whole relationship playing defense against the drop. The ones who actually get this right learn to manage the reservoir instead, long before it ever reaches the edge. That's the real difference between a man who keeps having the same fight over and over and a man whose girlfriend genuinely seems easier to be around, calmer, more patient, less quick to snap. It was never about her personality changing. It was about the reservoir finally being managed instead of ignored. Most men never learn this because the reservoir is invisible by design. Now you know exactly where to look. Remember that dish in the sink from the very beginning. It was never really about the dish. It was the pattern, the invisible workload, the missed bids, the hollow effort, all of it quietly filling the same reservoir, one small moment at a time. Your girlfriend isn't easily annoyed. She's just been keeping score on things you never knew you were being scored on. The good news is, none of this requires some dramatic gesture to fix. It just requires you to notice earlier, and to notice more. So here's the question I want you to sit with tonight. Next time she reacts to something small, what if that reaction isn't the problem at all, but the only proof you're ever going to get that the reservoir was already full? Hit like if you're still thinking about it, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.